Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first installment of Wednesday Weekly Skillshare, a program all about learning a new life skill or general life hack during your time here at Pacific. My name is Amber Mateer, and I'm the Graduate Assistant of Competitive Sports and Outdoor Programming at Pacific Recreation, and I'll be today's moderator. This session will be recorded for later posting on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions throughout today's presentation, you can drop them in the comment box, and I will ask them at the end of our presenter's time. Also, for participation counts, I have put a link in our comment box. So if you're a student, please click that link to sign in to this session. As a future plug, next week's session will be at 12:30 to 1 o'clock featuring Chelsea Skinner, and she will be going over, quote, leaving your mark, how to create a logo that defines your brand. This session is also being live streamed via Facebook, so I'll be also moderating that chat on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, I'll pop in there in a second. And at this time, I will be passing the virtual microphone over to our first special guest, Enzo Everett, to discuss psychological first aid and wilderness remote CPR. Unmute yourself, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Can you see me? Great. Hello, everyone. And I'm super honored to be the first guest on Wednesday Weekly Skillshare. So thank you, BAM, for that. So we're going to talk about two kind of things today. The first one being psychological first aid. Our marketing did a great job of kind of plugging a little bit of what that is. And I think we use the word specifically anything from infrequent boredom to everyday stressors, especially in the situation where we are now, where a lot of us are kind of stuck at home. A lot of us are in a situation where we can't get out and do the typical things that we would. It's important to practice a lot of self-care. Everybody's different. So regarding self-care, some people might need to stay busy. Some people might need to stay active and communicating with friends and in their work. And some people might need to really practice stepping away, taking time to unfold, relax, taking time for themselves, be outside in nature, all of these things. So a couple of things, and the biggest thing we want to talk about in terms of psychological first aid is stress, right? So the very first thing that you learn about when you're talking about just like, at least in our positions, Bam and I, is work-life balance, right? That's a big that's a big catchphrase that goes around. It's a real thing, but don't be afraid of stress. Stress is something that your body naturally produces in a positive way. So in terms of stress, a lot of people associate it with a bad thing, like, oh, I'm stressed, right? Like, oh, this is, or this, I have an assignment due tomorrow, so there's so much stress. Stress is not supposed to be a scary thing. Socially, I think we've created it to be that way. But stress is something that your body naturally produces to give you motivation, honestly, to get things done, right? So there are positive stress, right? When you are in a situation, trying to think of a good example. When you're in a situation where you're really hungry, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to stop and get some food. That is stress happening to your body telling you that you need to eat. That's a positive stress. When you're playing sports in any way, trying to run faster if you're in track, knowing that you're kind of just inches away from the finish line and your body kind of kicks into a high gear, and you start to feel a little heaviness on you, right? That's stress, but it's a positive stress because it's progressing you forward. So those are all positive kind of stress techniques. There are negative stresses that can happen when you get too overwhelmed the other way, and that kind of formulates what we talk about in our positions as work-life balance. For a lot of you guys, it will be school-life balance, right? And us too. Bam and I are both students. So I find that throughout my day, a routine is really, really important. A routine of saying, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to have, a little coffee, or I'm going to have some tea. I might watch an episode or something of something that I like. And then I'm going to slowly start to open up my book, see what I have for the day. Some people use online calendars, which is what Bam and I use as well. And then I know that at between 12 and 1, I try and have my lunch. And at 5, I really try and cap it. You might need to adjust that a little bit, because I know a lot of people's classes are actually starting sometimes 5 and later on. My class starts at 4 and goes till about 7. And those are on Wednesdays or Tuesdays, and I know I have to adjust my schedule on those days. But I might go for a walk outside and kind of disappear for an hour. I like podcasts and interviews, so I'll be listening to that, and I'll just try and kind of pull myself away from some of those things that are creating stress, which in our case is going to be school or work, or maybe just like the constantness of being inside, and not being able to be surrounded by people that you are typically surrounded with. So in that, I'm going to share a couple of kind of physical signs that you can use to kind of see if you are experiencing stress, and that if you might maybe try and make a change to some of your habits that might result in just better work-life balance, better school-life balance, and just overall satisfaction and contentness in yourself. So a couple of physical signs you might look for are if you're fatigued throughout the day, right? Stress can really take a toll on us, not just physically, but also mentally, right? So we might not just be fatigued, like we're like, oh, I feel heavy, I feel tired, but it might also feel like, man, I don't even have the capacity to do this assignment right now. Like I couldn't if I wanted to. We want to try and avoid those situations, right? And sometimes they're unavoidable, that's true, but a lot of times they are avoidable if you can simply just create a routine. Headaches are another thing that are physical signs of excess stress on somebody. Some body aches, difficulty sleeping. Typically, what I like to do at night is if I am trying to sleep, and sometimes you ever just have those nights where it's just like you're trying to sleep and there are constantly things going on in your mind. You're like, oh man, I have this meeting tomorrow. Oh man, I have to present at Wednesday Weekly Skillshare. I'm so nervous. All those things will keep you up. So I like to either have my phone by me, and in my alarm notes, just put remember to prep for Wednesday Weekly Skillshare. Remember to call mom. All those things. I try and do that, or I put it in my notebook, which I have right here and I use religiously. Just my planner, and it has a back end for notes, where I can just empty full pages, where I can make those notes for the next day, and then I can kind of sleep in peace because my mind is finally just resting, not worrying about the things that like, oh, am I gonna forget it? All those things. So that's another little tip and trick that you can do. Some behavioral signs that maybe some stress is in excess in your life too is this is a funny one, but inattention to grooming. This one's a little hard right now because, again, there's not a lot of access to grooming in terms of going out somewhere to get a haircut, things like that. I am very much in beard form right now, but you can kind of tell if you realize that it's like 3 p.m. and you're in a tank top and you haven't brushed your teeth and your hair is crazy, then and that's happening for weeks and weeks at a time. It's like, well, okay, maybe I can hone some things in. Increased sleeping as well. If all you're so exhausted and you're so overworked that all you're doing is just staying in bed, that's another warning sign. And then some mental signs is difficulty concentrating because there's just so much going on in your head. Forgetfulness, again, there's so much going on, or it's hard to focus on one thing that you are kind of just forgetting the little things, or forgetting appointments that you made, or missing things. These are all signs. And then similarities in kind of anxiety that can occur is worrying, a distortion of sense of time, right? So it's like, oh man, I wish it was the nighttime right now so I could just go to sleep, but it's like 11 a.m. Which is very common. That's not too much worry time, but if it's in excess, you find that that's happening every single day for consecutive weeks, it might be time to reassess. And then emotional signs, right, such as constant irritability, argumentativeness, angry outbursts, stress a lot of times, and this is a character flaw of mine, but probably share with a lot of people, is I tend to suppress a lot of things that I'm feeling, and I just like to think like, oh, if I can just get to 2 p.m., if I can just get to 5 p.m., or if I can just get to Friday, right, then I can relax. But what happens is if you don't try and make adjustments, or if you don't really expel some of that negative energy that you have, it's building up and it will come out whether you like it or not. I find that constantly, and sometimes I just find myself really exhausted or having an outburst, either by myself or with somebody who's a friend, and the friend will always say like, well, why didn't you mention this earlier? Like I could have been there for you. I could have talked to you. I would have loved to have discussed this with you. And yeah, in my mind, I don't want to burden anybody or I don't want to, I want to think I can get through it. When in reality, that's what support systems are for, right? So segueing, those are some warning signs. Some of the ways to cope is going to be your support systems, right? That can be anybody from a friend, family, an animal, right? I have a wonderful cat named Leo, who is my best buddy, who I will play with throughout the day, depending on whenever he comes out and says hi. And that's a great little relief for me. But your support system is super important, and everybody's schedule is all over the place and constantly changing, right? So a good idea, and what Bam, I've taken this from her, is scheduling times to talk to friends on her calendar, which I was like at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Like, it's a work calendar, why are you doing that? But it's really seemed to work for her. And then I started it. I don't do it in my calendar, but I'll make a little note like, oh, call mom today. And I know that I feel so much better getting to just express how I feel and talking to my mom, who's like my best friend. So those types of things have been super, super helpful. Breathing exercises, right? So a really great breathing exercises is one is to just explore all the senses. So I haven't done this in a while, so bear with me, but I believe you open your eyes and you think of 5 things you see and you name them, right? So I see a shirt, I see a door handle, I see my poster of me and my parents when we were at a Patriots game. And you realize the things in your immediate surroundings are usually typically good things that remind you of something, whether it's a painting on the wall, a color of your room that you like, a window that I can see outside, that it's a bright and shiny day, right? So 5 things you can see, and you kind of go down the list. 4 things, then you close your eyes, 4 things you can hear, right? If you're in a quiet space, maybe go outside where you can hear different things. I hear the birds, I hear the wind, right? These are all natural, pure things that kind of empower us. You go down what you can smell, right? Maybe there's something being made in the kitchen that's like, oh man, I can't wait to eat that. That's super exciting. Or cologne, like, or perfume. Oh, I'm going to go out somewhere safely and distanced. But I'm looking forward to this thing. Or I just got ready this morning just because, which is another thing Bam does a great job of. Things I think once you're at 2 or 1, it's like things I can taste, because there's typically not, unless you're eating 5 different foods, there's not a ton of things you can taste. But that's a great exercise, is 5 through 1, go through the senses and pick out things that you can identify with that kind of ground you and bring you back to reality as well. It's a great exercise to just find your space, find your inner person, and then kind of just reconnect with where you are. So that's those are some positive coping skills. Hopefully I gave you a little bit better idea of stress, and to not be too afraid of it, because you're never going to eliminate stress. You need stress, right? Stress is something that is going to propel you forward. But when you get in excess of stress, with the warning signs that I mentioned, coping skills such as working with the senses, taking time out to relax, and speaking with your support systems, are all things you can practice that will help ground you. Segueing into some little first aid stuff, specifically going into kind of wilderness, remote first aid. We're going to talk about just some basic things you can do. I guess I didn't do this in the beginning, which is kind of funny. But I am a lifeguard instructor. On top of lifeguard instructor, also a first aid, CPR, AED instructor as well, and have been for about 5 to 7 years at this point. So I didn't just read something and now I'm sharing it with you. This is trainings that I've done and I've worked on for a couple years now. But with first aid specifically, right, some things you can do if you're in a remote situation, which we are imploring you to do, and try and find spaces where you can be safely distant, but also enjoy the outdoors, which national parks and state parks are starting to reopen, so you should be able to explore some of these places. if you're in a situation where there are not a lot of people around, you're still going to follow some of the same general ideas of first aid and just, CPR, not AED because you won't have one, but CPR, blanking, I'm sorry, protocols and things and policies. They'll just change a little bit because of your access to outside aid. Hopefully you're within a distance where you still have some type of phone signal. If you're in a national park or a state park, there are emergency protocols in place that you should be able to get a hold of rangers or employees that work nearby. But if you are strictly out on your own in a space where it's just you and friends, first of all, with CPR, we'll go over some really, really basic things. If you come across a person who seems to be unconscious or seems to be non-responsive, without going through all of CPR with you, it is very basic to teach for the most part, just some tips. The first thing you're going to do, always, number one, doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, is make sure that you're safe. So the very first thing you're going to do is just check your surroundings, right? In the outdoors, the surroundings could be anything. You could be on unlevel ground. You could be where there are animals. You will be where there's animals. It's regardless. It's more so if the animals would play any part in altering your situation. But there may be trees around. There will be trees around, but they may be unstable, right? So you want to just check the whole surrounding and make sure there's nothing that's going to put you at risk. Reason being is one victim or one guest in distress is better than two. And that's kind of what we go by. Obviously you don't want any, but if you already have one, you don't want to also be, knocked unconscious or unresponsive in any way, shape, or form. So the first thing you do is check your surroundings. When that's good, you're going to approach the victim and you're going to just check for signs of life. And by that, you're just going to kind of tap them or speak to them, right? So you tap them, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? If there's no response and you don't see any signs of breathing, you can go into CPR, which is extremely basic. You're going to put your hands overlaced over one another across the chest line, lined up in the center of the breastbone, the sternum. The heel of your hand in the sternum, and you're going to complete 30 compressions with your arms locked out, just like this, 30 compressions, and then if you can do so with any type of barrier that you have, whether it be a t-shirt or a mask on, you can deliver 2 rescue breaths. And you can repeat that until you or somebody else has time to contact emergency services. Again, if you have access to those things. If you do not, you can continue to do so until and call for help until help arrives in some way, shape, or form. Typically, it's a very good idea not to go on these trips alone, but with a friend at least, so that if a situation like this happens, your friend or you can go get help while the other starts to try to render aid in any way, shape, or form that they can. That's a little bit of CPR, and then for first aid. Basically, if you see somebody who's experiencing any type of distress, and difference mainly between doing CPR or first aid is their consciousness, right? So if somebody is able to talk to you, if I'm able to talk to you, and I have a cut, or I'm having a little trouble breathing, or I am having an allergic reaction to something, those can all be classified generally as like first aid emergencies. Even more severe ones like strokes, seizures, things like that. If I'm still conscious in some way, shape, or form, you are going to use a simple mnemonic to, acronym, to evaluate what's going on. So, for instance, it's sample. So you're going to just see if there's any signs and symptoms on this person. If they have bluish skin, or if they have hives or reddish skin, what they're doing, if they're holding their neck, maybe they're choking or having trouble breathing. Symptoms, you can, if they can communicate with you, ask them, how are you feeling? Like, oh, I feel sick. Oh, I feel dizzy. Those are all symptoms. Allergies, see if they have any allergies. It could be that somebody swallowed something, or, if you're in the wilderness, it could be a berry or something like that maybe just didn't agree with somebody. Don't go into the wilderness picking random berries. Don't do that. But also things like poison ivy, there could be a lot of different reactions that happen out in the wilderness. Ask them if they have any medications. if what their past pertinent medical history is, if they're aware of any of the things that could have caused this. Maybe they know and they have an EpiPen and they can help explain to you where it is, and you can get that for them. You could easily be saving somebody's life. What their last oral intake was, so what they last ate or drank, and then just the events that led up to it. So what happened, right? This is a simple breakdown, and you won't be able to diagnose anything, but by just going over signs and symptoms, if they have allergies, if they're taking any medications, if they have any past pertinent medical history that might relate to the issue, what their last oral intake was, and events that led up to this situation, you can, more times than not, at least get on the right track of helping them help themselves. And then again, if it turns into a situation where they become unconscious, you can then jump into first aid. And again, the first thing you're going to want to do, if you can, is always reach out for help. These are things when you know you're in a very remote location and you're kind of a last-ditch effort, and you're either by yourself or you are in a space where somebody else is going to get help, and you are staying with this affected person. And yeah, that's about all I have for those two topics.
Thank you, Enzo. So we do have one question in reference to your psychological first aid stuff. So what is something that you are doing differently in your routine because of the pandemic to sort of help maintain your mental health?
Oh man, so one thing I'm trying to do, which I wasn't doing up until about last week, is I'm trying to, as much as possible, get out of my room. So right now, and I'm not even ashamed to pan this, I'm in my room. Here's my bed. And here's all my work stuff and, my laptop and tablet, right? Because Pam and I live in a house with 5 people, there are typically people around the house. But I find it is so much harder to sleep in my bed when I'm in my bed all day. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because another great thing to do is associate places and things with activities you do in them. So if there's a couch where you watch TV, try and only watch TV in that couch. If you sit outside in the morning to have your coffee, try and sit out there routinely to have your coffee. And in your bed, if you want to sleep better, only be in your bed when you're sleeping. That's been proven to really help sleep, aid mental state, and just help with routine. So that's something I'm doing, is trying to get out of my room into the general house and be at a desk also, because in class it does look a little goofy when I'm in my bed, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Great answer. I don't think we have any other questions. So this will conclude our first Wednesday weekly Skillshare. Again, thank you to Enzo for being our first guest in this whole series. Again, additional plug, next Wednesday at 12:30, we're going to have Chelsea Skinner hop on here and do a great little branding marketing 101 about branding yourself. So we will hope to see you all then. Again, thank you, Enzo. Thank you, everybody who came. Have a good rest of your day.